evening. Did you guys know that today actually marks the 1 month that Susan and I have been married? Yes, that's right. That means she put a ring on it. She did it, right? And since it's been a month, that means that we've been happily married for 27 days. We had 27 days of happy marriage, right? For those who are in married or those who are in a relationship, you know it's not all about rainbows and sunshines. You know, there's days that are kind of difficult. But of course, people love to ask when we're married, like, oh, so how is it being married? How is it? And you know they're not asking like for the good stuff. You know they're not asking for like, oh yeah, is it lovey-dovey? You know, like all that stuff. You're like, you know, I don't want to hear that. But they're more asking for the tea. They're more asking for like, hey, so what makes it so difficult? And that's like a real thing. That's a real thing in relationships because we know that relationships are not perfect and that there are many, many things in which people can fight about and all that fun stuff. But for us, for both Susan and I, if when I tell people what has been the most difficult within our marriage, I would say space, room. And the reason why that's so difficult because, you know, it's a single person and another single person coming together and living under one roof now. And it's difficult because, you know, when we watch TV, again, we have two different styles of TV shows. Now, there's only one TV, so we have to decide who's going to watch what when. In the refrigerator, if you guys didn't know, your refrigerator now takes up more space. Because for some odd reason, there's always a reason to go to Trader Joe's. There's always a reason to go to Target. And if you guys go to Target pretty often, you guys know that you don't go to Target because you need something. You go to Target and Target tells you what you need. And you know that because you're walking out you walk around without a basket, but then when you're done by the day, you're like carrying like 21 things. But also the thing that requires space a lot is the bedroom, the closet. Because as a single person, you know, I had my drawers, I had my closet space. And when she moved in, she was like, okay, Anthony, where do I put my stuff? And I was like, yeah, just put it in the drawers. And then she would open the drawers and like, but where? Because obviously everything in the drawer was to fit my things. Anthony, where do I put stuff in the closet? And I'm like, oh, just put it over there. She's like, where? Because again, everything in the closet was my space. And so I had to learn, and we had to learn that, you know, we have to create space together. And they say, one of the things that you do, if you can survive this in marriage, if you could survive this, then you can survive anything. And that is the IKEA trip of relationships. Because in IKEA, you go to IKEA, and then she says, oh, I love this. Wouldn't this be great in our bedroom? And of course, as a husband, you say, yes, dear, it does look good. That would look great. How about this drawer? Wouldn't it match our nightstand? And I'll be like, yes, dear, it does match. Because everything in my room didn't match at all. I didn't buy it to match. I just bought it for productivity, right? It wasn't even the same brands in part of it. And all that she's sharing within IKEA is like, oh, this is pretty. Oh, this is great. This is amazing. But the only thing that I could think of in my mind is she says it's for us, but it'll only be me building it. Oh. But thank God I actually love IKEA because I just kind of feel like it's adult Legos. It's basically adult Legos. You just build a bigger piece, right? And I definitely thank God for power tools because I would hate doing it all by hand. It'll be ridiculous. But space is seriously a real thing within our life. Do we have space? Do we have room for the things that we have in our lives? Especially this fall season's coming back up. Some of y'all may be starting school again. Some of y'all may be starting work. Maybe you guys took a break. Maybe there's a new transition. And now you're facing this new season and you're like, do I have room for this? Do I have space for this? Because my timeline is all filled. How do I go to work, do these things, go home, take care of the house, take care of my dogs, do all these different things? How do I have room and space to get all these things done? And for some of us, we feel that we need more room. Some of us feel like we need more space, and we think that is going to be the problem solving, the problem fixer upper of everything. Is that if I just had more room, more space to do something, then it would get done. But of course, we know that that is not the case within our lives. Because each and every single one of us has been given 24 hours in a day. If God gave you 25, you are very lucky. I'm not sure if he will give anyone 25, but we are all given a set amount of time, and we get to choose what we prioritize. We get to choose what are we going to put in our lives and what are we not going to have in our lives. Because for some of us, we prioritize certain things. Some of us prioritize health. You go to the gym, you do these things, and you're productive in them. That's great. For some of us, we prioritize meals. I'm the type of guy that when I'm eating lunch, I want to figure out what I'm eating for dinner. I'm one of those people. But we all have this different space of how we prioritize. Because that is a real thing in whatever relationship that we're in, whatever circumstance we're in, is that how do we manage our space, our time? So I want to ask this question for us today. I want to ask is, what does it mean to prioritize God in my life? What does it mean to prioritize God in my life? Because if I have 101 things that I have to do in my life, if there's work stuff, there's work stress, there's relationship stress, there's hobby stress, whatever. How do I prioritize all these things? And now I have to add God into it? How do I prioritize God in my life? And we're going to look in a story in the book of Luke about two sisters named Martha and Mary. And you guys can look online, or you guys could look on the screen, or if you want to look in your phones, feel free. But we're going to look at a story in Luke chapter 10, verse 38. And I'll read this out loud for us. And it says this: As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." And we hear this story of Jesus entering into a town. And as Jesus entered into a town, it was very common, very culturally, to accept people into their home as a host. And it was actually a great honor to host someone. It was actually a great honor to bring someone into their house. And actually, in their custom, there was a long list of things that you needed to do in order to be a host. There was a long list of customs of, like, if you're going to host someone, in order to host them correctly, you would need to do these things. For example, one of the things that you had to do to be a host is that you would have to give food. Food is a very, very big thing, not only in the Bible, but also in my culture. My mom would always do that. She would, anytime I had friends over or something, when I was in high school, she would always cut up fruit and put it with us. Even though we said we just ate, even though we say we're not hungry, she would always cut up fruit. I don't know why, but it was a cultural thing. But even here, it was a very cultural thing to make sure that you had all the things prepared, all the food prepared. Another thing that was really important was washing the person's feet, because for them, they didn't have, what's that called, shoes. They had dirty feet with sandals. So when they would recline on the couches and everything, they didn't want to get mud on the pillows or on the fabric or anything. So it was important to wash your guests' feet. That way they would have a clean and great experience, because that's what we want to do. As a host, we put our best foot forward. I mean, can you imagine if you invited your friends over, or imagine if you invited someone you liked, someone you cherished, or someone who's esteemed or wherever, and then you're having dinner, and then all of a sudden your spouse, significant other, mom, brother, sister, whomever, they start breaking out the McDonald's napkins that you've been holding on to, and you've been giving out, here, use this, and you're like, no, don't use the McDonald's napkins, I was saving that. I don't know. I'm not sure about you. I saved McDonald's napkins. That was taught to me as a kid. And we's like, oh no, we don't want to give these bad things. We want to give the good. And that's exactly what Martha wanted to do. Martha, as in custom, in their religion, in their custom, in their culture, it was important for them to make sure that their guest is well taken care of. But then we read how Martha was doing these things. And then all of a sudden, Jesus says, no, Martha, you are distracted. Mary chose the better, and that will not be taken away. And it's so interesting because if you've heard this story before, and maybe this is your first time, we think that the automatic reaction is to be, oh, Martha was wrong, and then Mary was right. So we should be like Mary. But if that be the case, if that was truly the case, then why was Mary, if she's so important, why is she only mentioned in passing? If anything, she's only given a small little line and not even a single dialogue of what she says. If Mary was so important, why is she just mentioned in passing? And for me, I believe this is the big thing Jesus wanted us to hear, was not really just focusing on Mary, but actually wanting to focus on Martha. And that's a big thing because a lot of times we don't want to focus on Martha. We want to focus on Mary. Because Martha did the wrong thing. She missed it. But we see that Jesus is not uplifting Mary, but truly uplifting Martha. Even though Martha did the wrong thing. Because sometimes we feel that. If you were an older sibling, you probably felt that. You did everything right, but then you get something wrong. That's pretty messed up. You can get everything done right, but still get in trouble for something wrong. And I think one of the things for me that I experienced that is that I try to make everything right. And one of the big things I try to do that in is actually planning a honeymoon with Susan. We're planning to go on a honeymoon, a little staycation and everything. But of course, on a pastor's salary, you have to make sure your budget is clear. You got to make sure that money is tight. We have to use every penny wisely. So we're making this budget, making this plan for our honeymoon. And then she would ask me, Anthony, can we do this? And I'll be like, no, it's too expensive. Or say, Anthony, can we go here? I'm like, nope, that goes over our miles. We're not going to do that. And then we finished planning our honeymoon, and it checked all the boxes. It checked the budget, it checked the route, it checked everything. But it didn't check one thing. Is it going to be fun? Because when you looked at it, it could have fit all the right boxes. It could have fit all the right things. But it didn't fit the most important piece of why we're going on a honeymoon, is to enjoy each other's presence. Even though I could have done everything right, I still was doing something wrong because I was missing the point. And for Martha, we see this as well. It's like Martha was missing the point. Something very important that Jesus wanted her to know. But you're thinking in your mind, but why wouldn't Jesus support Martha? I mean, she did everything right. Everything from the customs, everything from the traditions. She did everything right, making sure that he was taken care of, making sure that his feet will get washed, there's food on the table, the house is clean. Why wouldn't Jesus praise Martha? She did everything right. And we see that as Jesus talks to Martha, he talks to Martha and says, Martha, Martha, you worry. And we see that Jesus is not so much concerned with her actions, but more concerned with her attitude. What was her attitude during that time? Jesus, why won't you ask my sister to help? Why won't you do these things? Like, tell her to help me. And Jesus wanted Martha to know what is in more concern. What is important is not the action that you're doing, because you're doing everything right, but more importantly, it's what attitude are you bringing to the table? Because it's oftentimes we find it easier to be either or. Maybe we've heard again this sermon and we've heard it, people say, you need to be a Mary. Don't be a Martha. And we're like, okay, that's right. I'm going to be a Mary and I'm not going to be a Martha. And we think it's this either or type thing. But Jesus wants to open and expand this so much more than just being either or. Because if we would downplay Martha, if we say don't be a Martha, and we really just like throw her under the rug and just like don't be her, if we decided to do that, then honestly, we would have people who would not serve. We would have people who would not do what they know needs to be done for the right cause. And if we throw Martha under the rug, then we're just saying service is not really important. And at the same time, if we uplift Mary too much, if we uplift Mary way high, then we're saying, oh my goodness, then it's good to sit at Jesus' feet and that's all I'm going to do. But if we did that, we would just be a church. We would just be people who did nothing all day. Who would just sit, contemplate, and then that's it. But Jesus wanted to expand that there is so much more than that. Just like the greatest commandment he gave us is to love God and to love others. It's not love God or love others, because sometimes we treat it that way. But he expands it in a way to us to help us understand that no, the best way to love others is when we love God. When we love God fully, we have this amazing power within us through the Holy Spirit to love others the best way possible. And the same thing of when we love others, we are showing that we are loving God. Because the big thing that we do not want to undermine is what is God doing in Martha's life? What is God doing in your life? And that's a very big thing, because we see in Martha's story here, we see in Martha that she complains again, Jesus, tell my sister to do something. I'm working by myself. What else do you want me to do? And one of the things that kind of interests me is Mary. Because we automatically assume that Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus. She is literally just sitting at his feet and just soaking in all his teachings. That's what we automatically make our mind towards. But did you know that it was actually a saying? When you say you're sitting at the feet of someone, that means you are a disciple of someone. If you say you're sitting at the feet of Jesus, that means you are a disciple and you are doing what his teachings are telling us to do, and you're doing what you are called to do as a teacher, and that is exactly what Jesus is doing with his disciples. But staying at his feet was a very important symbol to say you are a disciple of this person. So what if Mary wasn't literally sitting at Jesus' feet? What if she was actually, that was a symbolism to say that she has decided to be a disciple of Jesus and she is going and doing her calling that Jesus had called her to do. And that would make sense of why Martha would be mad at Jesus. Like, Jesus, tell my sister to do something. If you guys have siblings, you guys know when you have your younger sibling or someone messing with you, you don't tell someone else. No, you grab your sibling yourself. You grab him, you're like, come here, you're helping me take out the trash, right? You're not going to say, ask someone else, ask your guest to tell your sibling to help you. No. And it kind of makes me think, what if Mary wasn't there, literally? but living and doing her calling that Jesus has called her. And that Martha was upset because Mary wasn't home when she wanted her to be. Martha was upset that Mary left Martha to do all these things by herself. But Mary was going out and doing what God called her to do. And it makes me think, what did Jesus wanted Martha to know? Martha, it is not the action that is bothering you. The action is not what's hindering you right now. It's actually the attitude in when you are moving here with me. It is actually the position in which we are willing. How much are we willing to do what God has called us to do? Because it's so much easier to do what's good. It's so much easier to do what's good than to do what God called us to do. It's so much easier to make ourselves feel better if I do the right things, if I do the traditions, if I do all these things, then I'm right. But that is so much easier than to do exactly what God called you to do. Because God calls us out of comfort and he pushes us to our calling. And for Martha, that is exactly what Jesus wanted Martha to know, that Mary has chosen to live in her calling, to be a disciple, and I am not going to take that away from her. But Martha, you now need to take up your calling. You have to take up your position, and will you follow me just as your sister has done? Will you follow and be a disciple? Live out the calling that I called you to be. And Martha is now in this position to choose what she will prioritize. Will I prioritize and just do what I think is good? Or will I prioritize what God has called me to do? Because here's the thing. A lot of us, we feel that we want a relationship with God. We feel that we have a relationship with God. But here's the thing. We can do all the right things, but it doesn't mean that we have a relationship. We can do all the right things. We can be the perfect boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, significant other. We can be all these things, but guess what? We can still be wrong. Because have we pursued doing the right thing, or have we pursued the relationship in where it truly is? And God is calling us to not just think of doing the right thing, but doing the thing that he called you to do. You see, I asked this question, is that what does it mean to prioritize God in my life? When in the midst of all these different things, in the midst of all that we have, how do I prioritize him in my life? And we read and we see it through Martha and through Mary, is that I prioritize who I am with God, not what I do for God. God is more concerned. God wants you. You are the person who God wants, not your sacrifice, not your actions. He wants you. And the way that we can begin to prioritize God in my life, the way we can do it in our lives, is that we prioritize who we are. We present ourselves as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing. Not just throwing sacrifices at him, hoping that this is the right thing to do. Because sometimes we can do the right things, but it can be very wrong. And that reminds me of a story, actually a movie that hits my heart. The movie is Encanto. If you guys have not watched it, I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil it. So cover your ears, or maybe don't cover your ears. But this movie is such a precious movie about meaning, about family, about what we truly prioritize. Because the story goes is that there was a woman who was being chased in danger, and she prayed for a miracle, and then they were able to build this encanto with this candle, and it saved everyone from this danger. But what ends up happening is that she gets family, and as a family, these families begin to have these gifts, these powers, these magical things. You eat from whatever she cooks, you're healed. I can hear you from a distance. Super strong, grow flowers everywhere. And they use these gifts to bless everyone in town. They use these gifts to be a blessing. But what ended up happening is actually one of her grandchildren didn't get a gift. And she became the back end of the family. Maybe even forgotten. Because you have nothing to offer. You have no gifts. Why don't you just move aside, Maribel, and let the family take care of it? And what ends up happening is the flame of the candle, which was the power, it begins to dwindle. And then Abuela, she begins to pray like please, like give us a miracle. Give me a miracle. But the flame grew softer. The candle got shorter. And what ended up happening is it just went out. The house was destroyed. All the gifts the grandchildren had disappeared. They were nothing anymore. But what ends up happening after is Abuela began to learn. She had to learn. She had to go through the process and see that this giftings that she gave to, the gifting that was given to all her entire family, this miracle was not this magic that you got, but the miracle was actually you. And we see that she had to repair relationship with her family again. She had to repair her relationship with her son, with her family, that she was more concerned about the magic than more concerned about them. And that's exactly what we see here at church. A lot of times we think that we are more concerned. We want more of your sacrifice. We want more of what you can offer than anything else. And if you can't offer anything, then you know what? There's the door. But here's the thing. Church is not these four walls. Church is just an empty shell, or the building is just an empty shell. What makes church a church, what makes it so powerful, so amazing, is you. You are the gift. You are the power. You are the content that is within this building that changes lives. That when people come and they experience you, they're experiencing something that is out of this world. And what and who you are and what you bring is just the side of who you are. That you are a son, a daughter of Jesus Christ, of God the Father, and that He has and wants you to live out the calling that He has for you. That we are not an empty shell. We are not just a building, but the people